Our session is brought to you by Canyon Professional Development at Grand Canyon University. Our topic is collaborative teams supporting student learning. This is part one of a two-part series on using collaborative teams. And hi, my name is Cece Bosma. I am part of the Canyon PD K-12 team, and I'm excited to share what I have learned in my 17 years in the field of education with you as we dive deep into working with collaborative teams. To get us started, I want us to think about setting intentions for our time together. And here is a quote from Daniel Siegel, who is an author and guru of intention setting. And it says that intentions create an integrated state of priming, a gearing up of our neural system to be in the mode of that specific intention. We can be readying to receive, to sense, to focus, and to behave in a certain manner. And so I'm just going to ask that as we get started with our session, just to pause for a minute and think about setting an intention for this probably a little less than an hour video, because often you're coming to this, it's been something that has more of an obligation, but I think that you will find the information very valuable. And so if you can think of perhaps setting aside some of those other pressing ideas that are bouncing around in your head, and just give yourself time to lean in to our session together. And so your intention, here's a couple of examples of what your intention might look like. I give myself permission to try something new, or perhaps you're going to give yourself permission to actively engage with the activities. Hopefully you're not going to feel awkward. I don't know if you're viewing this with a group of folks, which might actually be helpful, especially for this particular topic. Or maybe I'm going to set aside those distractions and give myself 1 hour to learn something new. These are some learning goals that we have for this time. We want to make sure that we share some practical strategies that will help to build and nurture that high-performing collaborative team. So no matter where you are in the scope of working on a collaborative team, this is going to either help build it or strengthen what you've already got in place. And we want to be able to focus in on leveraging data to effectively inform and refine your curriculum plans as you're doing that co-planning. And then also thinking about tools and techniques for developing a common formative assessment and what that might look like. I have our takeaway container here. I always like to keep that is an idea of that we want to take something away from our time together. So think about what you might take away during our time together today. And another quote, this one's more topic specific, but I love quotes. I think they get us thinking about things in a more dynamic way. And this one is: the most valuable resource that all teachers have is each other. Without collaboration, our growth is limited to our own perspectives. And that is so true. What does this quote make you think about? And this is from Robert John Meehan. So thinking about collaborative groups, what is your level of experience working with a collaborative team for planning? How is you and your team currently using your time together? How are you using it for planning? Be specific. I would even urge you to pause the video here and think about what is being accomplished in your collaborative teams, if you have them already. When thinking about collaborative teams, what comes to my mind after many years of experience is that it is so crucial to build a collaborative culture. We can't do collaborative teams in isolation from the rest of the school. No school can help all students achieve at high levels if teachers are working in isolation. And this resonates with me because I know when I first started teaching, I was working with another teacher. There were actually two teachers at the grade level, and it was so helpful to be able to collaborate with my co-teacher. But some of the other grades did not have two teachers per grade level. And so it was a bit of an anomaly that we were able to collaborate together. And as I went through the years there, I saw my own sense of self, sort of the ebb and flow of being able to effectively use collaboration, depending on the dynamics of the group. And one thing that I always remember kind of learning the hard way is the importance of working with the group and thinking of your fellow teachers as part of your team. Because in some groups of teachers, and I think it's not, it just sort of organically happens without really thinking about it. It almost begins to be, instead of thinking of it as teammates, that they're competitors of who can come up with the best ideas for whatever it might be, field trips, teaching, projects, the science fair, that kind of thing. And we should always be thinking about how can we build collaboration, not be the best and compete, so to speak. So just keep that in mind as we go through what it's going to take to build those collaborative teams and create that culture that really makes a strong platform for success. So to get started, we want to take a look at some foundational ideas. We want to clarify the purpose of teams and connect to school mission and vision. So think about your school mission and vision. How can you connect what your team is going to focus on to that mission and vision? It keeps things, it's like the rudder. It keeps the boat headed in the right direction. And then you're also going to want to consider how to establish team norms. And we're going to look at this much more closely in just a moment. So I'm going to move on. I definitely want to clarify roles and assign roles, whether that's self-assigned or some other democratic process. But it will help to clarify the structure of your gathering and make sure that jobs are not being duplicated. And then clarifying protocols. Just like with your students, you will be more productive as a team if you have protocols in place to guide your time together. So think about those opportunities to create protocols. So when we think about team collaboration, why do we want to do this? Why do we want to have collaborative teacher teams? Well, we certainly want to ensure high levels of learning for all students. And we're going to do this using data to determine what is taught to whom, is how we can differentiate to help every student achieve. And we can accomplish more together. So this is that collaborative culture. Not to mention that offering students collaborative activities is important as well. And we are able to better teach student collaboration when we have experienced it ourselves. So it's a twofold situation there in building that collaboration. And then let's make sure that we're focusing on results. We want to stick to the data. Feelings and opinions are not fact and can often inhibit the success of a collaborative team. So if we just focus on the data and not on on what we feel so much and kind of set that aside, we'll see some great success, and it will really drive change in your group. And then let's think about how we can leverage each other's strengths. Communication will help to create open channels and utilize shared platforms. And we want to make sure that we are actively listening to the diverse perspectives. It really, that listening to understand, not listening to respond. We want to be open to embracing some ideas, others' ideas, and be transparent in our decision making. This is going to happen through healthy debate. Think about honesty, providing constructive feedback. Acknowledge challenges and build trust through authenticity. We want it to be equitable, ensure all voices are heard, and address biases. Tailor the curriculum to meet diverse needs. Coming at it with respect is important as well. We have to be able to value our individual strengths and celebrate the contributions of each member of the team. And in this way, we can foster a really supportive environment. Everybody has their own specific expertise. And so if we can leverage each other's knowledge and skills, we will encourage that professional development in the team. Prioritize well-being and offer those growth opportunities, as well as celebrate success together. It's so important to be celebrating our success, as well as thinking about that collaborative problem solving and doing it with those protocols in place so that you're just following a process and together you're working towards a solution. So what is it that we're going to be doing with our collaborative groups? We want our students to learn. And in collaboration, this is where we can help our students optimize their learning. Consider, what will we do if they don't learn? So now we can use our collaborative team time to consider, what is that next step when we find that there's still a learning gap? And what will we do if they already know it? Is it time to move on to the next standard skill, or are we going to introduce some enrichment based on that specific skill, a new application of the skill, if you will? Differentiation is key to making learning meaningful for all of our students. What can we do to take our students who are ready to the next level? So this brings us back to those norms that I was talking about. And I really, I will spend a few minutes here on norms because I think that they are pretty crucial to successful teams. This is where your team is going to start building that culture together. And so these are some ideas that you will want to consider in building those team norms. Because a team is productive when guided by agreed upon norms that are revisited frequently. So what is the expectation of participation for each team member? Remember, clear is kind. And we want to be clear about accountability, and our norms should be specific. And I should say that clear is kind is certainly from Brené Brown. I don't want to not cite her influence on the use of that term or the creation of that term. So thinking about team norms, here are 5 areas that you'll want to consider. You can use the team norms to reduce uncertainty and confusion. So when creating them, think about what makes you uncertain or confused when working with teams, and then create norms to clarify that. Foster trust and collaboration. In order for the team to build that culture, there has to be a level of trust and an invitation for collaboration. We want to make sure that we're promoting respect and open communication. So, and yes, this is possible with creation of team norms and just taking that time to spend with each other. And then, of course, we want to increase focus and productivity. If protocols are not in place, I will often find myself going to a team meeting and not sticking to the agenda and instead completely off script, complaining about something, heavily engaged in a conversation about what someone else did over the weekend, all kinds of distractions that can reduce that productivity. So if we have that protocol in place, that norm that says stick to the protocol, will increase focus, which will in turn increase productivity. And then think about how are we going to hold each of us accountable? How is each member of the team going to be held accountable? And we'll take a look at that in another way here. So here are some foundational concepts that you'll want to consider when developing your norms. Communication, active listening, providing constructive feedback, respecting diverse perspectives. That's really important. So you want to have communication built into your norms. Participation. We want everybody to be attending those meetings regularly and contributing ideas. So having even a protocol for how everybody is going to participate, even the quiet ones, and having the quiet ones share their input into what is going to help them be more participatory. Sharing resources. Sometimes we want to hold on to our resources. They're special, but if we share them, it's actually going to build a better team, and it will probably make the use of that resource even stronger. Respecting deadlines. So when you're collaborating as a team and there's something that's needed to be completed by a certain time so that the next meeting can be productive, we want to make sure that everybody agrees to respect those deadlines, that they're not just, well, if you feel like it. Decision making. Everybody wants to have a hand in the decision making. Think about any situation that you've been in, with your principals, heads of school, where they have made a decision without any input from you. And how did that make you feel? So we want to make sure that decision making is done in a fair way, whether it's voting. We want to make sure that all viewpoints are considered and arrive at how we can accept those final decisions. And then respect. And it seems like one would say, oh, well, yes, we must respect each other. But sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge. And sometimes we forget in the heat of the moment that respect is really important. And so we want to maintain that confidentiality. We can value our differences and avoid personal attacks. And preparation is important to the group, to honoring the group. Perhaps you're only going to allocate 30 minutes a week to your group. That's not a lot of time for a lot of time. And so proper preparation, sticking to those deadlines is necessary for that group productivity. And when thinking about your norms, translate the norms into concrete behaviors and expectations. Discuss potential consequences for violating norms, and that could just simply be a gentle reminder. Perhaps agreements need to be revised. If this isn't working for you, how can we change it to make it work for you? Create a visible document or a chart summarizing the agreed upon norms. And you're going to want to emphasize that norms are not static and they can be revisited and adjusted as needed. I would take a minute. It shouldn't take long. Don't have too many norms. Revisit them at the beginning of every meeting. Is everybody still in agreement with these norms? And then move on. Be open to suggestions for improvement and adapt the norms accordingly. In the handout section, you will find a norm creation document. I want you to use this to develop your own team norms. So make sure that before you meet the first time that someone has that printed out or pulled up on their computer so that they can refer to it as you endeavor to create your own norms. Roles, collaborative team roles are really important to keeping your time together efficient and effective, and of course, ultimately helping our students learn. So in collaborative teams, individuals often will take a specific role to ensure that different tasks and responsibilities are effectively covered. And here are some common collaborative team roles. But remember that specific roles can vary depending on your team's purpose, size, and dynamic. You could have some leadership roles. There's generally that leadership person that keeps things humming along. There's a facilitator, perhaps, and that role might be that there to guide discussion, ensure participation, and keep the team on track. Perhaps you have a project manager to oversee the overall project and assign tasks and track the progress. Maybe you assign a decision maker and that person makes the final decision based on the team discussion and consensus. You could have content and expertise roles, such as a subject matter expert, providing knowledge and insight related to the team's focus. You might have someone that's in charge of scheduling, and they are going to be getting these meetings on the calendar and sending out reminders and follow-ups. Then there might be a document specialist who is in charge of that Google file where all of the documents that you're working on are housed. Perhaps you have a note taker that just really is just keeping track of the meeting minutes and who's been assigned what responsibilities each person has taken on during a particular meeting, and having that documented so that there's no gray area. Like, I can't really remember what I was supposed to do. If we have that note taker, then those notes can be housed with our document specialist, and everybody knows where to go and find what it is they signed up for. A couple other things you could have is a resource curator. They find and share relevant resources and materials for whatever the team is working on. If nobody's got a lot of answers, this might be who would like to be the resource curator this week? Who can go find some more materials? And then you might have a communicator that effectively communicates team progress, decisions, and updates to stakeholders. Someone might have to that might be that person that's the go-between with administration. That's always important. Maybe you have the devil's advocate. This person is going to just challenge assumptions and proposes alternative perspectives. And maybe that's something that's shared by the team. It just depends. If you find that your team is not gelling as well as you'd like, create the encourager role. Support the team members and celebrate successes, and have someone that's specifically there to make sure that those celebrations and opportunities are recognized so that you can foster a positive environment. Some other roles that you could do as well, perhaps maybe a timekeeper, and that ensures that the meeting and discussion stays on schedule. You might have a tech and logistics support. This person could set up the technology, manage the meeting logistics, and help with any technical issues. And I think that's All the roles I'm going to share with you now, you might have come up with some of your own, but make sure that you're clearly defining the roles and responsibilities at the outset and encourage team members to communicate their areas of strengths and expertise and rotate the roles periodically to give everyone a chance to contribute in different ways. Regularly evaluate and adjust roles as needed to ensure the team is functioning effectively. So by effectively using collaborative team roles, you can build a strong and cohesive team. When you think about your team planning, you are going to want to consider how often that you want to meet. If you haven't started, consider what is going to work best for you and also come up with a few options. Working in a team requires some compromise. Once a week is usually a good pace for team meetings. And these are not supposed to be lengthy meetings. Remember, I said like 30 minutes. You might even be able to get it down to 20. Create and stick to an agenda and honor each other's time by starting and stopping at the agreed upon time. Consider meeting before or after school or possibly during a shared planning time. And consider that when you start these team meetings, that ultimately they will free up time because now you are sharing the work. So there is a silver lining here. And thinking about your team meetings and what you want to accomplish, we want to make sure that we stay focused on the right things, and that is the results. We are going to look at data in our team meetings, and we want to measure the effectiveness based on results, not our intentions. So we're going to continually assess programs and practices based on their impact on student learning. Teachers receive information and timely feedback regarding their effectiveness in achieving intended results. As you meet each week, you will be able to provide each other that feedback in a timely way. So imagine collaborative meetings where data sparks a vibrant discussion and fuels creative solutions that lead to tangible improvements in student learning. Today, we are going to unlock the secrets to making that vision a reality. Focus teamwork on developing formative assessments, creating common rubrics to measure understanding, and examine student work using those rubrics to systemize examination. Using data produced, we can strategize common interventions and enrichments and provide objective feedback to each other. The fact that teachers collaborate will do nothing to improve a school. The purpose of collaboration can only be accomplished if the professionals engaged in collaboration are focused on the right thing. So just getting into a group does not equal success. You really have to develop those protocols and plans. What does collaboration look like with your school team? What do you hear and see? What types of work is your team engaged in? I want you to take time to pause the video and consider where you and your team are, what you and your team are presently doing. Where do you want to be by the end of the school year? What do you need to do to get there? This is just the beginning of the inquiry. If you don't have all the answers yet, that is okay. But keep these questions in mind as we further look at our collaborative teams. So let's take a look at the collaborative team cycle. And so we're going to start over here with standards at the top. And we want to align our collaborative members on common goals and learning standards. Visualize these as a shared roadmap, and they will be guiding everyone towards the same goal, the same destination, if you will. And then it's important to next identify some learning outcomes, those essential learning outcomes. Pinpoint the key knowledge and skills that students should be able to demonstrate. Break down the broad standards into specific, measurable outcomes. And then next, we want to collaboratively develop some formative assessments. Work together to create assessments that measure students' progress towards the outcome. You'll definitely be referring back to the variety of formats that we've talked about: quizzes, exit tickets, observations, CFAs. And we will focus more on those in part 2. And then it's time to assess. We need to administer those assessments consistently. Ensure that all the members use the assessment in the same way to maintain that consistency. Provide clear instructions and guidelines for administration and scoring. And that's something that you'll want to agree upon while you're in your collaborative groups. After you have assessed, it is time to analyze that data collaboratively. Gather and analyze the student data from the assessments together. Identify patterns, strengths, and areas for improvement. Now, once we have that data and we've analyzed it, how are we going to use it? We want to use it to adjust our teaching, to adapt our teaching strategies based on the data insights so that we can address our students' needs. And this is where we might be providing differentiated instruction and targeted supports. And this can mean identifying students that are still building skills and providing targeted instruction, as well as looking for students who show mastery. And how are we going to provide that enrichment? Whether that is applying skills learned in a novel way or learning next level skills. Along the way, you definitely would like to keep track of the progress and revise as needed. We want to be monitoring our student progress over time and make adjustments to assessments or instruction as necessary. And then it is also important to continuously refine the process to ensure effectiveness. And so that's our general cycle within a collaborative team when it comes to using those assessments. So thinking about curriculum planning within your collaborative team, you're going to start with a shared vision to align your course. And think about those big picture goals. Define the overarching aims and desired outcomes for student learning. Think about content coherence by identifying key themes, knowledge strands, and essential skills that will be woven throughout the curriculum. Make sure that there is a common understanding, and this ensures consistency in sequencing and pacing and expectations across classrooms. So especially if you're working with a grade level set of teachers, that things are happening at the same time. And collaborative creation is going to be key. You need to build it together. You can't do it in silos. Collaboration invites increased buy-in, improved quality, and shared responsibility. To make this happen, it is important that you schedule meetings on a regular basis. You'll want to make sure that you are utilizing a shared platform such as a Google folder. It's that simple. And do be sure to seek help from others. Brainstorming sessions are helpful in sparking creative ideas and share knowledge through group discussions and activities. You are going to go through a series of drafting and refining. You're going to assign diverse roles and facilitate collaborative document editing and improvement. And enforce that feedback loop. We want to integrate that regular peer review and reflection to ensure all voices are heard and quality is optimized. And that's going to take a little getting used to. Peer feedback is often a rare gem to be had in education. It is often comes with the loaded review, and let's make it more regular. Why does it always have to be loaded? Why can't it just simply be looking for improvement? Because we're all practitioners, we're all practicing. So in those groups, embrace that opportunity to help each other improve and be willing to share where you see something could use a little improvement. I see how you're doing this and it's working, but what if you tried this? We all have room for improvement, so you can do this. And then actionable implementation. We want to turn our plans into impact. And that might be through differentiation strategies, but we want to make sure that each teacher in the team has the tools and resources to tailor that instruction to the individual needs. And thinking about formative assessment, because we're going to talk a little bit more about it real quick here, but we want to align ongoing assessment with our curriculum goals in order to be able to track progress and inform adjustments. And so that formative assessment is really integral to your collaborative teamwork. And because it is going to be what provides us with the data for our data-driven decisions. We're going to leverage data from those assessments and that feedback in order to drive improvement. So I talked about roadmaps, and when you're thinking about that data-driven action plan, you want it to be really concrete. So leave with a roadmap for progress. And one way that you can do this is by creating a SMART goal. And I'm sure you've all heard of them, but I will review it for you here. I did not provide a SMART goal handout because I imagine that you probably already have one that you use. And if you don't, a quick Google search, you will find dozens. Pick one that resonates with you. But in a nutshell, a SMART goal is where you're going to set specific, measurable, and achievable and relevant time-bound goals based on data insights. And then there's that shared ownership. You're not in this alone. You're not just out there in a flotation device all by yourself. Delegate tasks and responsibilities with clear timelines and accountability measures. And then have a follow-up plan. Schedule check-ins to track progress and adjust strategies. And then, of course, I can never remind you of this enough. Celebrate your successes. You will find success, even if it's small. You will find success. So one crucial tool for your collaborative team planning is going to be developing common formative assessments. And so I'm going to give you a brief overview of what that looks like. And it's just one of those things you're going to have to dive into. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So this is a little bit about how we can develop a common formative assessment, or CFA, because it can be a powerful tool for teachers to gauge student understanding, and it will inform instruction and drive that improvement. And so here are some strategies that I want you to use to get started. Collaboration and planning. Team collaboration, gather teachers from across the grade level or a subject area to work together and develop a CFA that you're all going to use, so you can have that universal data. Prioritize learning goals and identify key learning objectives and skills that you want to assess across the group. And for you folks that maybe are working in a grade band, I would suggest that you think about those foundational standards that go across grade band, especially in the K-5 arena. You know, if you're working with like first through third grade teachers, what is a foundational ELA skill that starts in first grade and is and moving all the way into third grade, possibly fifth or eighth grade even, and how you can create a CFA that will work across the grade bands. And you'd be surprised. It's pretty amazing stuff. So alignment with standards is key. We want to ensure that the CFAs align with relevant curriculum standards and learning benchmarks. If this is across grade levels, I would suggest using the foundational standards. Consider using a mix of assessment formats like quizzes, open-ended questions. It could even be a project or a performance task. In order to design effective CFAs, you need clarity and focus. Keep the CFAs clear, concise, and focused on specific learning objectives. Multiple levels of difficulty should be included. Include questions that cater to different skill levels. Keep it authentic and relevant. Make CFAs relevant to real-world scenarios and connect them to the ongoing learning activities. And if possible, connect them to something that the students can relate to. In order for CFAs to be effective, we have to analyze the data. Design CFAs to provide reliable data that informs instructional decisions and individual. It will help with you take into consideration that individual student feedback on how that CFA went for them. So thinking about that, implementation and improvement, we want to make sure that we see how well our first round works and see where we need to tweak it and create improvements. And then don't be afraid to communicate with your stakeholders. Share the CFAs with the students and the parents. You can even do it beforehand to explain their purpose and format, and make sure that you're using the CFAs on a periodic basis. Decide what that's going to be and make sure that you're implementing that with fidelity. We want to use CFAs consistently across the participating classes or groups. And using your collaboration time for analysis and analyzing that data collectively, you'll be able to identify common needs, strengths, and areas for improvement. Reflection and refinement are key to making this effective for your groups. Reflect on what was working and revise as needed based on the data and the feedback. Some other things to consider: you can utilize online platforms or shared documents to facilitate the development and analysis. Pilot test a CFA with a small group before you fully implement it. Seek out professional development on formative assessment and data analysis if you need to. I'm going to go into it a little bit more in our next section together, but maybe you want to take an even deeper dive. Developing a CFA is an ongoing process, and it's crucial to involve all stakeholders, analyze data carefully, and continuously refine your approach to maximize the impact on student learning. And by following these strategies and embracing collaboration, you can create an effective CFA system that supports and drives improvement for all students. And so when we're thinking about a CFA, this is going to be sort of almost like a standardized formative assessment that you're going to create. So there's going to be other formative assessments that you're still going to use in your classroom. A CFA is just maybe a midpoint check-in that happens based on a specific skill that you are targeting based on a specific standard. So CFAs are not the only formative assessment that you should be using in your classroom. It is just one really great way to standardize it across your group of teachers, and then you can bring back uniform data to analyze. So I want to share with you an example of a CFA. This is how simple it can be. So this was from sixth grade, and it's sixth grade math, number sense. So we're going to It reads, understand, and this is just one portion of this standard. Understand the absolute value of a rational number as its distance from zero on the number line. Interpret absolute value as a magnitude for a positive or negative quantity in a real world context. And so for part one of understanding absolute value on the number line, we have the following 4 questions. And for each number you plotted in question 1, find its absolute value and write it next to the corresponding point. Then we're going to ask them to explain how the distance between 0 and a positive number relates to its absolute value. Explain how the distance between 0 and a negative number relates to its absolute value. So giving a chance for them to explain their thinking as well as showing giving just an answer to a mathematical problem. And then part 2, we're going to elevate it a little bit here and interpret absolute value in real world context. A submarine dives 80 meters below sea level. What is the absolute value of the submarine's depth? Explain what this value represents in this context. And then we go on to ask a few more questions. So we have these questions, and this is how we're going to analyze it. We've got a grading rubric, if you will, a scoring rubric, I should say. So for part 1, we're going to assign 1 point for each correct plot number on the line, 1 point for each correct absolute value, and 1 point for each correct explanation for the positive and negative numbers. And then in point 2, we have 1 point values being assigned, and then we even have our bonus question. And there's going to be 2 parts to it, so there's 1 point for each part. So very simple scoring structure, just a few questions, not a massive end of unit exam. We're just doing a check-in to see if the students are grasping the new concepts or if there is some more teaching that needs to happen. And specifically, where does that need to happen? In your resources with this, we have a CFA template, if you will, or a planning guide. And so I want you to use this form as a flexible template and customize it to fit your specific needs. And feel free to add additional sections or information as needed. Communicate effectively with your team members throughout the CFA planning and implementation process. By using this planning form, you can ensure that collaborative formative assessment is well designed, effective in gathering that valuable data, and ultimately contributing to improving student learning outcomes. So I hope this helps, and I will see you in part 2 when we really start looking at what are some of those assessments that we can use to really drive our collaborative team planning. So let's take a look back over here at our learning goals, thinking about those takeaways, right? We hopefully have some ideas about what it's going to take to build a high-performing collaborative team. Then thinking about how data is going to drive the effectiveness of your team and working to refine curriculum plans. And then some tools to develop that common formative assessment. So you're going to have to just dive into that. Think about what you are currently working on, and you have to just try it out. The more you work with it, the better you're going to get at it, I can assure you. And so I leave you with our why, and this is to empower, educate, and inspire you, our community of educators, so that you can take action and fulfill your purpose as you serve the students and families in your community.